The old space outpost floated in the quiet darkness of deep space, its metal walls creaking as if it had grown tired of holding itself together. Ethan, a human engineer, was alone on maintenance duty, fixing broken wiring in the main corridor. He preferred silence, no crew, no visitors, just the soft hum of the station's life support systems. But that night, something broke the silence. It was small at first, a faint scratching sound above his head. Like tiny claws on metal, Ethan frowned and looked up at the ceiling panels. He had checked for pests before. There shouldn't be anything alive up there. Still, the sound grew louder, moving quickly along the ventilation ducts. Before Ethan could grab his scanner, one of the ceiling vents popped open, and something, or rather someone, slipped out. She was tiny, no taller than a human's knee, with pale glowing skin and hair like strands of silver light. Her eyes were large and bright, reflecting the station's dim lights like twin moons. She tilted her head, studying him with an amused smile. "Big human," she said in a voice both soft and playful. "Big hands." "Slow hands." Ethan froze, unsure if his mind was playing tricks. This wasn't in the job manual. A small alien girl was standing on his tool cart, balancing like a gymnast. She had no weapon, no armor, just a strange shimmering scarf around her neck. "Who are you?" Ethan asked, but she giggled and jumped down, landing with surprising grace. Instead of answering, she ran her fingers over his toolbox, picking up a screwdriver. "This is yours?" she asked, tilting her head. "Humans make clumsy tools." Ethan reached to take it back, but she darted out of reach, laughing. She was faster than anything that small had the right to be. "Hey, that's not a toy," Ethan said, stepping toward her. But she spun around and tapped his boot with the screwdriver like it was a sword. "Too slow," she teased before tossing the tool back into the box. He didn't know whether to be angry or curious. She was acting like this was a game, but her eyes, there was something in them, a glint of mischief hiding something deeper, something she didn't want him to see. "What are you doing here?" Ethan tried again, but she simply smiled. "Maybe I live here," she said. "Maybe I watch the human when he sleeps." That made him pause. "Watch me when I—" "No, that's not funny," he replied. But she only grinned wider before running toward the corridor. He followed her, but she was already at the far end, waving before slipping into a ventilation shaft. The panel closed behind her with a soft click, leaving only the faint smell of alien flowers in the air. Ethan stood there, unsure what had just happened. It was possible she was a stowaway from a visiting ship, but her size and strange glow didn't match any species he knew. He considered calling station security, but something told him they wouldn't believe him, and maybe he didn't want them to find her. Not yet. That night, he tried to focus on his repairs, but the quiet scratching returned, sometimes above him, sometimes in the walls. Once, he swore he heard her laugh. At 0300 hours, Ethan was lying in his bunk when a light tapping sound came from the corner of his room. He sat up, scanning the shadows. His eyes landed on a small object sitting on his desk, his missing screwdriver. Wrapped in a thin ribbon of silver thread, he walked over, touching the strange ribbon. It shimmered faintly under his fingers, as if made of living light. A note, scrawled in messy handwriting, was tied to it. The words were simple. "Catch me if you can, human." Ethan felt an unexpected smile tug at his lips. She was still here, somewhere, playing games, but he couldn't shake the feeling that there was a reason behind it, a reason why she wanted him to follow, to chase, to look for her. As he lay back in bed, the faint scent of those alien flowers drifted in again. This time, he noticed it was mixed with something else, a hint of fear, and he realized, whoever she was, she might not just be here to tease him. Something or someone else might be looking for her. 2. The next morning, Ethan woke up to the faint sound of metal clinking in the distance. The outpost was quiet as always, but he had the strange feeling he wasn't alone. He grabbed his toolkit and stepped into the corridor, scanning for movement. Halfway down the hall, he spotted her. The tiny alien girl was sitting cross-legged on top of a supply crate, twirling one of his wrenches between her small hands. Her silver hair shimmered in the pale light, and that same mischievous grin was on her face. "Morning, big human," she called, her voice echoing playfully. "Still slow?" Ethan sighed. "You're up early," he replied, trying to sound casual. "Mind telling me why you keep stealing my tools?" She tilted her head. "Not stealing," she said. "Borrowing. For fun." Then before he could step closer, she hopped down from the crate and darted into the maintenance hall. Her laughter ringing through the empty space, Ethan followed. His boots clanging against the floor, the hall was narrow, lined with closed doors and scattered supply boxes. He caught a glimpse of her ducking behind one, only for her to appear again from the opposite side a moment later. As if she had doubled back, it was a game, and she was winning for the next hour. She led him all over the outpost, slipping through gaps in the walls, climbing pipes, and vanishing into shadows. Every time he thought he had her cornered, she'd pop up somewhere else, waving at him before disappearing again. At one point, he turned a corner and found her sitting on the floor, legs dangling, humming to herself. She looked completely relaxed, but when he stepped forward, she suddenly tossed a small metal ball at his feet. It rolled once before unfolding into a tiny, mechanical bird that chirped twice and exploded in a harmless puff of blue smoke. Ethan coughed, waving away the smoke. "What was that?" he asked. She grinned. "A toy," she said simply. "Humans don't have fun, so I give you fun." But her eyes flickered for a moment, just like the night before, that quick flash of something darker. When she noticed him looking, she turned away, hopping back toward the corridor by mid-shift. Ethan found himself both exhausted and curious. He didn't know why he was playing along. Maybe it was because she brought a strange kind of life to this otherwise dead station. Or maybe it was because he wanted to understand what she was hiding. Finally, he caught her near the airlock. She was holding a small holographic device. Pressing buttons quickly, Ethan stepped closer and saw a faint star map flickering above her palm. It showed the surrounding sectors, but certain points were marked with red, moving toward their location. "What's that?" he asked sharply. She quickly shut the device off and stuffed it into the folds of her scarf. "Nothing," she said. "Just stars." Ethan crossed his arms. "That wasn't nothing," he said. "Are you running from someone?" She didn't answer. Instead, she walked up to him, so close he could see the tiny flecks of light in her irises. "If I tell you," she said softly, "you won't sleep at night." Then, just like that, she turned and skipped away, leaving him standing at the airlock with more questions than answers. That night, the game continued, but now Ethan wasn't sure if it was just a game anymore. She left strange objects in his quarters: a glowing feather, a coin made of unknown metal, and a fragment of what looked like alien armor. Each time he found one, she would be watching from a distance, smiling but never explaining. At one point, while checking the security cameras, Ethan spotted her on the feeds. She was crawling along a ventilation duct, pausing suddenly as if she'd heard something. Her head turned, and for a brief moment, Ethan saw her face change, the smile gone, replaced with pure fear. Then she vanished from the camera's view. He rushed to the area but found nothing. The corridor was empty, silent except for the soft hum of the air systems. Later, as Ethan tried to rest, a quiet tapping came from the wall behind his bed. He sat up, pressing his ear to the panel. A whisper slipped through, so soft he almost didn't hear it. "There." "Closer," her voice said. "Don't turn off the lights." Before he could respond, the sound faded. Ethan lay awake for hours, wondering who they were, wondering why she chose him of all people to speak to, and wondering just how dangerous this game of hide-and-seek was about to become. The outpost felt different that night. The steady hum of the system seemed quieter, as if the station itself was holding its breath. Ethan was in the control room, pretending to check power levels, but his mind kept drifting back to her whispered words. "They're closer." He kept glancing at the cameras, searching for a flicker of movement. But the screens only showed empty corridors and dim-lit storage bays. Still, the feeling in his gut told him something was wrong. A faint noise made him freeze. It was coming from the vent above him, a soft, rapid tapping, like fingertips on metal. Ethan tilted his head. "Is that you?" he asked quietly. A moment later, the vent cover slid open, and the tiny alien girl dropped down, landing lightly on the console. She wasn't smiling this time. Her eyes were wide, darting toward the sealed door, as if expecting it to burst open. "Any second. We don't have much time," she said, her voice low. "They're already in this sector." Ethan frowned. "Who?" She hesitated, her hands twisting the scarf around her neck. "Hunters," she finally said. "They track my kind. They never stop, and when they find us, we—" She trailed off, swallowing hard. "We don't survive." Ethan felt a chill run through him. "So you've been hiding here," he guessed. "That's why you keep moving through the vents. Why you don't stay in one place." She nodded. "And why I tease you," she added, a flicker of her old grin appearing. "If I keep you chasing me, you're looking at me, not them." That made him pause. She hadn't been playing with him for no reason. It was a distraction, a way to keep herself safe while she checked the outpost for threats. A sudden alarm blared from the console, making both of them jump. A proximity alert flashed red across the screen. An unidentified ship was approaching. The girl stepped closer, gripping his sleeve. "Turn off the external beacons," she urged. "Make it look like the station is dead." Ethan's fingers moved quickly over the controls, powering down non-essential systems. The outpost's lights dimmed, plunging them into a deep, shadowy glow. For several minutes, they sat in silence, watching the scanner. The ship stopped just outside sensor range, its presence like a shadow pressing against the walls. Then slowly, it began to circle. "They're looking for me," she whispered. "They can smell my kind even in space." Ethan gave her a quick glance. "Then we keep them from coming in," he said. She shook her head. "You don't understand. If they think I'm here, they won't stop. They'll cut through every wall, burn through every door. Her voice broke slightly. "They took my family like that." Before Ethan could respond, a dull thud echoed through the station. The sound of metal meeting metal. Someone was testing the hull. The girl's breathing quickened. She reached into her scarf and pulled out the small holographic device Ethan had seen earlier. Pressing a sequence, she projected a faint map of the outpost, marking certain vents and corridors in blue. "These are the only safe paths," she said. "If they breach the hull, we move through here." Ethan studied it. "That leads to the auxiliary airlock," he noted. "Yes," she said. "A small ship there. I've been repairing it." "You've been?" Ethan shook his head. This girl was full of surprises. Another thud came, louder this time. The console flashed. An exterior panel had been damaged. Ethan stood, grabbing a plasma wrench. "If they get inside, we'll fight them off," he said. She gave him a look that was part disbelief, part admiration. "You're strange for a human," she said softly. "Most would hand me over." "Not my style," Ethan replied. "Besides, I don't like bullies." For a moment, her lips curved into a small smile. Then her eyes shifted, focusing on something behind him. The security monitor flickered, showing a shadow moving across one of the outer corridors. The image glitched, but Ethan caught the shape. Tall, armored, with a faint red glow where the face should be. "That's them," she whispered. "That's a hunter." As they watched, the figure stopped and turned toward the camera, as if it knew it was being observed. The red glow brightened, and then the feed went black. The girl stepped back, her voice barely audible. "They know I'm here." Ethan felt a knot in his stomach. The game of hide and seek was over, and the real hunt had just begun. Asterisk, the emergency lights painted the corridors in a faint red glow. The hum of the station felt heavier now, like a heartbeat under pressure. Ethan followed the tiny alien girl through the maintenance tunnels, her small steps light but quick. She Didn't speak at first, only glancing back to make sure he was still following. Finally, in a small storage bay far from the main decks, she stopped. She sat on a crate, pulling her knees up to her chest. Her glowing eyes seemed dimmer now. "You deserve to know," she began softly, "because if you stay near me, you'll be in danger too." Ethan leaned against the wall, crossing his arms. "All right," he said. "Tell me everything." She took a breath, her voice shaking slightly. "My name is Leora," she said. "I'm the last child of the Shaylin people." Ethan frowned. "Shaylin," he repeated. "I've heard the name, some extinct species, right?" Her lips pressed together. "We're not extinct," she said quietly. "Not until the hunters finish their job." Ethan stayed silent, letting her continue. "My people were different," she said. "We were small, like me, but we had gifts. We could sense life, heal wounds with a touch, and our voices could calm even the most violent creatures." She paused, her fingers tightening on her scarf. "The hunters feared us, or maybe they hated us, I don't know. They came without warning, burning our forests, taking anyone they caught." Her eyes shifted to the floor. "I hid in the roots of a great tree while they captured my mother. I remember her screaming my name, telling me to run." Her voice cracked. "I never saw her again." Ethan felt something heavy settle in his chest. "How did you get here?" he asked. Leora gave a small, bitter laugh. "I escaped in the cargo hold of a smuggler ship. They didn't know I was there. I stayed hidden until they docked at the station, and I stayed." She glanced at him. "At first, I thought it was safe. No one came here, and the old systems kept me warm." She looked away again. "But a week ago, I saw them, the hunters, on the far edge of this sector. I thought I could hide, but they can track my scent, my energy. I don't know how." Ethan rubbed the back of his neck. "And you've been teasing me this whole time just to keep me distracted?" Her lips curled into a faint smile. "Partly. I also thought maybe you wouldn't be like the others." "What others?" he asked. Her smile faded. "Humans who saw me and decided I was worth money," she said. "Some tried to catch me, sell me to collectors. I learned to run, to make it a game, because if it's a game, it doesn't hurt as much." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Well, I'm not selling you," he said firmly. "And I'm sure as hell not handing you over to those things out there." Her eyes softened. "You'd risk yourself for me?" He shrugged. "I've got nothing better to do." But the truth was deeper. He couldn't stand the thought of her being taken. Suddenly, a deep, metallic clang echoed through the walls. Both of them turned toward the sound. Ethan pulled up. A small terminal on the wall. The security feed showed one of the outer doors sparking as something cut through it. "They're here," Leora whispered. Ethan's mind raced. "You said you've been repairing a small ship," he said. "Yes," she nodded quickly. "But it's only for short jumps. It can't outrun their main vessel." "Then we don't outrun them," Ethan said. "We outsmart them." She tilted her head. "You have a plan?" "Sort of," he admitted. "But first, I need to know. Do you have any abilities that can actually help us fight?" Leora hesitated, then slowly removed her scarf. Beneath it, a faint marking glowed at the base of her throat, like a living crystal embedded in her skin. "This," she said, touching it lightly. "It's called a soul stone. All Shaylin have one. It lets us release a wave of energy that can stun living creatures. But it only works once before I'm too weak to move." Ethan's eyes narrowed. "So, if we time it right, that could give us a window to escape." Before she could answer, another loud crash shook the walls. The lights flickered. Leora slid off the crate, moving toward the vent. "We have to go now," she said. "They're breaking in." Ethan grabbed his toolkit and followed. "Lead the way," he said. As they crawled through the narrow shafts, Ethan couldn't stop thinking about what she'd told him. She wasn't just some mischievous stowaway. She was the last spark of an entire people. And if the hunters got her, that spark would be gone forever. He wasn't going to let that happen. The air inside the maintenance shaft was cold and thin. The dim red emergency lights barely reached this far, casting long shadows that seemed to move on their own. Ethan followed Leora through the narrow space, his hands brushing against rough metal walls. Every sound felt louder than it should. His own breathing, the distant creak of the station, the soft patter of her bare feet on the metal floor. Then came the noise that froze them both. A deep metallic clang echoed through the shaft, followed by a slow, dragging sound, like heavy boots scraping along the deck. Ethan stopped, holding his breath. Leora pressed her tiny fingers to her lips. Urging silence, her glowing eyes shifted toward the sound, sharp and alert. They're inside. She whispered, barely audible. Ethan's pulse quickened. The hunters had breached the outer hull, and now they were moving through the outpost. He imagined them, tall, armored figures with those burning red eyes, scanning every shadow. For the small alien girl beside him, they reached a vent opening. Leora peered through first. Ethan crouched beside her and looked. The corridor beyond was bathed in faint red light, and in the distance, a shape moved slow and deliberate. The outline was inhuman, too tall, with long angular armor that gleamed in the dark. The hunter paused, its head turning slightly. Ethan's breath caught. He swore the thing was looking right at them, even through the vent cover. But after a moment, it turned away and continued down the hall. Leora's small hand grabbed his wrist. "We can't go that way," she whispered. "Follow me." She led him deeper into the maze of shafts, twisting through tight spaces until they reached a small chamber, an old storage hub no longer in use. Dust floated in the air, and the only light came from a thin crack in the wall. "This is safe for now," she said quietly, sinking down against the wall. Her voice was steady, but her hands trembled slightly. Ethan lowered himself beside her. "You all right?" he asked. She gave a faint smile. "I'm used to running," she replied. "But it's easier when I'm alone." He glanced at her. "You're not alone tonight." Her eyes lingered on him for a moment before she looked away, wrapping her scarf tighter around herself. The sound of distant footsteps echoed again, slow and steady, sometimes stopping as if listening. They sat in silence, the weight of the moment pressing down on them. Hours passed, the air growing colder. Ethan could feel his muscles stiffening, but he didn't dare move too much. Any sound could draw the hunters closer. At one point, Leora shifted, leaning slightly against him. "Why?" she whispered suddenly. "Why what?" he asked. "Why are you helping me?" She murmured, "You could leave me here, slip away, save yourself." Ethan shook his head. "Not how I'm built," he said simply. "And besides, you're worth saving." Her expression softened, and for the first time since he met her, the playful mask was completely gone. She looked almost vulnerable, like the child she truly was under all the teasing. Suddenly, the faint sound of metal scraping came from the wall beside them. Both froze. Leora's eyes darted to the crack in the wall. A shadow passed by, followed by the faint red glow of a hunter's visor. Ethan held his breath, his hands slowly moving to the plasma wrench on his belt. The hunter stopped, standing perfectly still. Then, in a slow, deliberate motion, it tilted its head toward the wall. The red glow brightened. Leora's hand gripped Ethan's arm tightly. She mouthed one word, "Don't," after what felt like an eternity. The hunter stepped away, its footsteps fading into the distance. Ethan exhaled slowly, his heart pounding. "They're searching every inch," he whispered. "They won't stop," she replied. "Not until they find me." He looked at her, determination hardening his voice. "Then we make sure they don't." The rest of the night passed in tense silence. Every sound, a creak in the metal, a faint hum from the power lines, felt like a threat. Ethan stayed awake, watching the shadows, while Leora eventually drifted into a light, restless sleep against his side. When the first faint hint of light seeped through the crack in the wall, Ethan knew the night was over. But the danger wasn't. The hunters were still somewhere inside the station, and the search would only get more desperate. As Leora stirred, rubbing her eyes, Ethan gave her a faint smile. "Morning," he said softly. She looked at him, her voice low. "We made it through the night." "Yeah," Ethan said. "But now we need to get out of here before they tighten the net." Leora nodded, her playful spark returning just slightly. "Then follow me, Big Human," she said. "Let's see if you can keep up." And with that, she darted toward the next shaft, Ethan right behind her, knowing that the night of danger was only the beginning. The cold air in the shaft bit at Ethan's skin as he followed Leora through the narrow crawl space. The metal walls vibrated faintly, carrying the distant thud of boots and the hum of scanning devices. The hunters were still inside, still searching. Still closing in, Leora stopped at a junction, glancing both ways before whispering. "The auxiliary airlock is this way," she said, pointing to the left. "The small ship is ready, but—" Her voice trailed off, her glowing eyes narrowing. "But what?" Ethan asked, keeping his voice low. She hesitated. "If they see us moving toward it, they'll destroy it before we can launch." Ethan thought for a moment. Then a small grin tugged at his lips. "Then we give them something else to look at," Leora tilted her head, curious. Ethan pulled out his toolkit and began rummaging. "We create a distraction, something loud, bright, and in the wrong direction," he explained. "They'll move toward that, giving us time to get to your ship." Her lips curved into a small approving smile. "Not bad for a big human," she teased. They moved quickly through the shaft until they reached a service hatch. Ethan pried it open and dropped into a dim storage room. Leora followed, landing lightly beside him. He crossed to an old power conduit and began rewiring it, attaching a small overload device. "This will trigger a heat spike on their scanners," Ethan said. "They'll think it's you." "And when they come running?" Leora asked. Ethan's grin widened. "Boom!" She chuckled softly, shaking her head. "Humans are dangerous," she muttered, though her tone carried something like respect. Once the trap was set, they slipped back into the ventilation system. Crawling fast, Ethan kept glancing at the small wrist display he wore. It tracked the overload timer. The seconds ticked away. At 30 seconds, they reached a larger maintenance shaft that led toward the auxiliary bay. Leora's pace quickened, her small frame moving like water through the tight space. Ethan struggled to keep up, his bigger frame scraping the walls. Then the explosion hit. A deep, echoing blast shook the station, followed by the crackle of burning circuits. The lights flickered violently. The sound of heavy footsteps thundered through the corridors. Multiple hunters running in the opposite direction. "It worked," Ethan whispered. They moved faster now, Leora leading them through a final bend until they emerged above the auxiliary bay. Through the grate, Ethan could see the small ship, sleek but worn, its hull patched in places, a faint hum of standby power vibrating in the air. Dropping down quietly, they hurried across the deck. Leora began keying in the launch codes while Ethan sealed the bay doors behind them. "Engines online," she said, her voice steady despite the tension. "We have a 2-minute window before they realize the trap." Ethan slid into the co-pilot seat, strapping in. "Let's make it count." The ship's engines roared to life, a low vibration shaking the bay. The outer door began to open slowly, revealing the black ocean of space beyond. But then, a loud metallic crash echoed from above. Ethan's eyes shot upward to see a massive armored figure dropping from the rafters, landing hard on the deck. The hunter's red visor locked onto Leora instantly. "Go!" Ethan shouted, grabbing the plasma wrench and charging forward. The hunter swung a heavy weapon, smashing the floor where Ethan had been standing a moment earlier. He rolled to the side and slammed the wrench against the hunter's arm. Sparks flew, but the armor barely dented. Leora's voice rose from behind him. "Ethan, move!" He dove aside just as she touched the glowing crystal at her throat. The air vibrated, and a sudden pulse of shimmering energy burst from her, slamming into the hunter. The red glow in its visor flickered, and the massive figure stumbled, momentarily disoriented. "That's all I have." Leora gasped, her body trembling from the effort. Ethan grabbed her and pulled her toward the cockpit. They leapt inside, sealing the hatch just as the hunter recovered and slammed against the ship's hull. "Launch now," Ethan barked. Leora's hands flew over the controls. The ship's thrusters ignited, and they shot forward, slipping through the still-opening bay door and out into the cold void of space. For a brief, beautiful moment, the stars stretched endlessly before them. But the moment didn't last. On the scanner, the hunter vessel was already turning, its massive silhouette like a predator locking onto prey. "They're coming," Leora said, her voice tight. Ethan scanned the system readout. "We can't outrun them," he said, "but maybe we can hide." She gave him a quick glance. "Where?" He pointed at a nearby asteroid field, jagged rocks tumbling through the darkness. "In there," he said. "If we're lucky, their sensors will have trouble picking us up." She didn't hesitate, swinging the ship toward the drifting wall of stone. As they entered the asteroid field, the hunter ship followed, its weapons charging. Ethan strapped himself in tighter, his grip on the console firm. "If we make it through this," he muttered. "You owe me a less dangerous game of hide-and-seek." Leora gave him a faint, exhausted smile. "If we make it through this, big human, you'll never get rid of me." The asteroid field was a graveyard of ancient stones, drifting silently in the void. The tiny ship weaved between them, its engines humming low. Ethan gripped the co-pilot's console, his eyes locked on the scanner. Each passing second felt longer than the last. Behind them, the hunter vessel moved like a shadow, its huge frame slipping in and out of sight behind drifting rocks. Leora's small hands moved quickly over the controls, guiding their ship into the narrowest gaps, skimming so close to the asteroid surfaces that sparks sometimes flew from the hull. A sharp tone from the scanner made Ethan's stomach tighten. "They've locked weapons," he said. "Not for long," Leora replied, swerving hard. The ship tilted sharply, slipping into the shadow of a massive spinning rock. The hunter vessel passed overhead, its sensors sweeping the area. Ethan held his breath, watching the scanner's red dot move further away. Then, slowly, it faded from view. "They've lost us," Leora whispered. Leaning back in her seat, the tension in her voice eased, but her shoulders stayed tense. "For now," she added quietly. Ethan let out a slow breath. "That's all we need. Now we find somewhere safe to land." They spent the next few hours drifting between the asteroids, keeping the engines low and quiet. Finally, a small moon came into view, barren, cratered, and silent. Leora guided the ship down toward a flat stretch of rock. The landing was soft, the hum of the engines fading to silence. Inside the cockpit, the quiet felt strange after so much noise and danger. Leora sat still for a long moment, her gaze fixed on the stars outside. "You saved me," she said at last, her voice soft but clear. "More than once." Ethan glanced at her. "You saved me too," he replied. "That pulse thing. Without it, I wouldn't be here." She gave a small smile, the kind that didn't quite hide the weariness in her eyes. "It's not something I can use often," she said. "It takes too much from me." He nodded. "Then you were risking yourself." Leora tilted her head toward him, her expression serious. "We were risking ourselves," she corrected. "Together." The words hung between them, heavier than the silence of the moon around them. Ethan stood and moved to the back of the small ship, pulling out a thermal blanket from the storage compartment. He handed it to her. "Rest," he said. "You've earned it." She took it, but instead of curling up alone, she patted the seat beside her. "Stay here," she said simply. He hesitated only a moment before sitting. The warmth of the blanket wrapped around them both. Leora leaned lightly against his side, her breathing slowing. For a while, neither spoke. The quiet was not uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence that came after surviving something impossible. When she finally spoke again, her voice was softer. "Back in the station, when I teased you, I didn't think we'd end up here." Ethan chuckled quietly. Neither did I. I used to think, she continued, that the only way to survive was to keep running, never trusting, never stopping. She glanced up at him, her glowing eyes catching the faint light. But now, maybe I was wrong. He met her gaze. You were wrong, he said, because sometimes stopping is the only way you find someone willing to fight for you. Her lips curved into a small smile. Then I guess I'll stop running for now. The rest of the night passed in peace. The faint hum of the ship's life support was the only sound, and outside, the barren moon kept its silent watch. When the first rays of distant sunlight began to brush the horizon of the cratered surface, Ethan stirred. He looked out at the stars, feeling something he hadn't in a long time, a strange pull toward the unknown. Leora shifted beside him, still wrapped in the blanket. It's morning, she said quietly. He smiled faintly. Yeah, she sat up, stretching. What now? Ethan stood, glancing at the controls. Now we figure out where the hunters won't follow and maybe find the rest of your people, if there are any. Her eyes widened slightly. You'd help me do that? Of course, he said. You're not alone anymore, remember? For a long moment, she just looked at him. Then she nodded, her voice steady. Then wherever we go next, we go together. Ethan gave a small grin. Deal. As the ship's engines came alive once more, lifting them from the dusty moon, the two of them shared a glance, not of fear, but of something stronger. They had survived the night. They had beaten the odds. And now, whatever lay ahead, they would face it side by side. The stars opened before them once again, vast and endless. And their small ship disappeared into the light of a new day, carrying a human and the last Shaylin girl toward whatever future awaited them.